2026. Hope everyone had a great holiday season and your new year is off to a wonderful start. What I want to do today is touch base on something that's going to continue to drive headlines, not only now, but throughout the year, and why the Magnificent Seven gets so much attention. We've had this conversation quite a lot over the last couple of years with clients, and I thought maybe putting some of the numbers into context would help show the magnitude of these seven companies. And so, in case you're unfamiliar, the Magnificent Seven are the seven largest companies in the S&P 500. We have Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet or Google, Amazon, Tesla, Meta or Facebook, and Nvidia. So these seven companies make up a substantial portion of the concentration in the S&P 500, but then also the performance. And they continue to drive headlines, not only as a group, but also each company individually. When something's going on with that company, it gets a lot of attention. And so we've had a few great years in the market, but I want to put in context the relationship between these companies and the rest of the market and how things are projecting or looking going forward. And so in the top left, we have the performance of the Magnificent Seven, but then also we have the performance of what we call the S&P 493, so the other 493 companies below them, in the percentage of the return in the Mag 7 versus the market, or what share it was. And there's a couple of years I want to highlight, and that's in 2023, we had a great year in the market, but 63% of the market performance was driven by the Mag 7. So it's a huge piece of all of the great returns that everyone had. 2024, although lower, still 55% of the market returns was generated by these seven companies. But although it works and is wonderful on the upside, it can work in reverse. And we see that in 2022. In 2022, if everyone remembers, we had both a down year in the equity markets and we had a down year in fixed income. And so 56% of that downdraft was created by the Magnificent Seven. So again, it can and does work in both ways. So, but that again shows you the magnitude of these companies and how much of the performance they truly are driving. So if we go to the chart below, this answers the question why that is. Why are those seven companies driving so much of the return? And you can see in their earnings growth. So this chart is just year over year earnings growth. In the green is the Mag 7, in the blue is the 493 or the rest of the S&P 500. And you can see in 2022, the 493 had actually a great year in earnings. They generated 9% in earnings. So they had a positive earnings year, although not as high as 2021. They still generated positive earnings. But you can see the Mag 7, not so much. Their earnings contracted by 14%. So again, when you have the seven biggest companies generating negative earnings, that can also compound what else is going on in the market. But since then, we've just seen an explosion in earnings growth. 31% in 2023 versus -4% for the rest of the S&P 500. 40% in 2024 versus just 4% for the rest of the companies. And then last year, 21%, although not as large of a growth year still solid earnings growth, but the rest of the market is starting to participate. And you can see that last year, 9% for the rest of S&P, the 493. And then 2026 projections, although again are just projections, they're projecting the Mag 7 to have 24% growth, but the rest of the market to have 12. So we're starting to see more companies participate in earnings growth projected going forward, which again is a good sign. But when we look at the actual performance dispersion, that's the big chart on the right. And so going back the last 3 years, in 2023, so your baseline is the S&P 500 performance. Again, we had double-digit returns in all 3 years. All 7 companies in 2023 massively outperformed the broader market. NVIDIA with over 225%, Meta almost 200%, Tesla doubled also that year. Just huge price returns. 2024, 6 out of the 7 outperformed the S&P, with Microsoft not outperforming, but still generating positive returns. You still have NVIDIA with just huge return numbers, and the rest of the companies still doing quite well, well over 50% for a few of them. But then last year, the tables are turned a little bit, and only 2 out of the 7 outperformed the S&P. Again, NVIDIA, also Alphabet, but the rest did not. And again, we don't know if that's going to be a trend going forward. But again, when you've got more of the earnings share of the total market starting to broaden out to the other 493 companies, the rest, it'll be harder and harder every year for the Mag 7 to continue to outperform. And so again, I want to just put into context what the Magnificent Seven has meant to the market and what it has meant to the market performance, but also give you into context of what's going on with the other 493 companies that are out there. Hopefully you found this helpful to put the overall market and the individual participants into context. And we will continue to keep our eye on these companies and the headlines going forward into 2026. So this is January 2026 chart of the month. Hopefully you found it helpful. We'll see you again next month. Thank you.